Picked up by Westbrook. Westbrook on the return. Here comes Westbrook. He's got a lead. Here comes Westbrook. He gets by. Brian Westbrook going all the way. Touchdown, Eagles.
Touchdown, Jackson Smith, the catch of the year. Rivers is intercepted by Leonard, and the Jets are set up in the red zone.
Deshaun Jackson gets a block. Are you kidding? Deshaun Jackson still not in, and now in for the touchdown, no flags.
Hello everybody and welcome to an all-new edition of the Code Green Radio Show, your one-stop shop for all things Eagles and Jets, brought to you by D. Miller Associates, Apollo Auto Sales, and of course, interstateofgreen.com. Broadcasting on the dial 1360 AM, Yahoo Sports Radio Philly, online, WNGCradio.com, and on your smartphones and tablets through the TuneIn Radio app. I'm Craig Gorbanoff, filling in for Rich Wilhelm tonight as host, and it's my pleasure to be joined by our writers, Alex Hand, Joe Perry, and Jeff Steinman, and of course our friend Frankie Vittorini of U Stadium. On tonight's show, we will be discussing the draft needs of the Eagles and Jets, and who can make a difference day one as well. And then our Fandings debate of the night: who will win the NFC East? Will it be the Eagles, Giants, Cowboys, or Redskins? As well as some possible rule changes going into this next season. Be sure to stay up to date with us at Code Green YSR on Twitter. The YSR is for Yahoo Sports Radio. And guys, let's just jump right in and let's start talking about the NFL draft as it's rapidly approaching here, about a month to go until one of my favorite times of the years. And let's open up with the Philadelphia Eagles. So Alex, there's a lot, this team has a lot of uncertainty, but on paper, they have a lot of guys filled. What do you think this team needs to really build on it in this year's draft?
On paper, this team had solved a lot of its issues through free agency. We saw them bring in a lot of ex-Bill players, most notably in the secondary position as well as the strong side linebacker position. Secondary has always been an issue since the relief of Brian Dawkins back in 2008, so the fact that they're trying to get back to that and shore up that position has been a great start. But if we're talking draft needs, Howie Roseman has pointed out that O-line is first, all other positions second. So I feel like going into the draft, if they choose to stick with the first-round pick and, as opposed to dropping into the later rounds, picking up a second or doing anything wild like that they would go with a guard or a tackle. And if we're talking particular players, I would say either Ronnie Staley or Jack Conklin, one of those guys. Even though it's number 8, it might seem early for a guy like Jack Conklin. He's been very high on the Eagles' radar. Running back has also been a position of need with the trade talk of Ryan Matthews, as well as the release or trade, of DeMarco Murray to the Tennessee Titans. The desire to have a third-string quarterback, although we won't be seeing that in the first round, is a need that the Eagles plan on addressing in the draft. Depth at interior defensive line, I feel, will be a huge area of need, especially, God forbid, there was an injury to Fletcher Cox or Benny Logan, players like that. Going from a 3-4 back into a 4-3 interior D-line becomes a much larger issue at that point. A couple of other positions I would feel that the Eagles should address in the draft would be both depth at the strong side and weak side linebacker positions, as well as strong safety.
And yeah, you were right. They did address a lot of these guys in free agency in terms of on paper who the starters are, but I still think there's a lot of work to be done. Frankie, you're always one of our most opinionated guys. Let me hear it. What do you think about what this Eagles team needs to be successful next season?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think it comes down to one position, and I've harped on this on previous shows, and I'm going to harp on it again on this show. I think the quarterback position needs to be something that the Eagles invest in now so that in 2-3 years they'll be able to see some fruits from their labor. I think Doug Peterson can do great things with quarterbacks. He's proven that, with guys like Foles, even earlier on with Vic. Andy Reid took him over to Kansas City just to work with Alex Smith, and Alex Smith overachieved in my opinion. I was never a big fan, but Peterson seemed to get the best out of him. I think the Eagles come into this season, do what you have to do with Bradford, because you paid him and he's obviously the vet there and he understands what's happening and going on. But I think you have to make a move to get one of these young guys. I'm not really sold on any of them in particular. I do like Carson Wentz a lot, and I think if the Eagles have to do something in the realm of moving up, maybe up to 5 with Jacksonville, who just signed a boatload of players and probably doesn't really need someone all that early just because they've signed so many guys. Maybe you can move up with Jacksonville, or maybe the Cowboys want to move back if someone that they like. Maybe they want Elliott. So maybe when you're the Eagles, you're going to say, hey, Carson Wentz is available at 4. Let's move up with Dallas. Dallas will take a shot maybe getting Elliott at 8, considering the fact that maybe, Jacksonville doesn't need a running back. Baltimore, I don't think they draft Elliott all that early. And San Fran's got, they got a young running back there in Hyde, and they just re-signed that young kid too. So I think that could be a good move for Philly, assuming Wentz is available up there and they're looking at the quarterback position. I would. Well,
when you mention quarterbacks and you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, to me the guy who might actually fall to them at 8 is Jared Goff.
Yeah.
If Wentz is as good as advertised, and I'm not necessarily on that bandwagon at this point in the draft process, but if he's the surefire guy at number 2 for the Browns, I don't necessarily think that any team other than the 49ers are in a position to draft Jared Goff. And should the 49ers decide to go in another direction, which I think Chip Kelly might, I think he might really want to use Colin Kaepernick. And, this is maybe, all this trade talk is maybe just, him being fed up with previous regimes and previous coaching, but Chip Kelly might be able to make a difference. I think he's satisfied with his quarterback and would want to build around it and make Kaepernick want to stay and play for this team. Joe, what do you think about Philly? What do you think they need, especially now that they're at the number 8 pick? What direction should they go in?
Yeah, so I definitely love how they got up to the 8 pick with the trade with Miami. That was awesome. Great move by Roseman. But, there's a couple different ways they could go here, and it's so hard to get inside Roseman's head and see what his big board looks like. So it's definitely tough to predict this. Even the experts can't predict with their mock drafts. They're always wrong. But it's interesting because they're paying – there's a guy on that roster, the Eagles roster, who they're paying franchise quarterback money to, Sam Bradford, and he's not a franchise quarterback. So if Jared Goff does slip to 8, they're going to have to take a long, hard look at him. And if Harry Roseman likes what he sees, and he has to be totally convinced that that's his guy, because that's a huge investment with that 8 spot. So, yeah, the quarterback situation isn't solved, and if Goff is there and they like what they see, then they should definitely pull the trigger on him. If not, secondary, there's 2 really nice young cornerbacks that they can use with Hargreaves and Ramsey from Florida State. I love both of those kids. And if they're there, they should look long and hard at both of those guys. One of them will be there, I'm assuming. I think it's a little early to go O-line at 8. I know Alex thinks that they could pull the trigger. And, hey, if Conklin's their guy at 8, then they should take him. But I think that they might address the offensive line in the second day, in the second round. But, yeah, I mean, quarterback, cornerback, offensive line, 3 needs. If they believe in Bradford, then you could take quarterback off. But, yeah, I like the cornerbacks from Florida State and Hargreaves. I think they're difference makers in the secondary. So the Eagles could go, 3 different ways, I think, with that 8 pick.
I agree with you as well on that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ramsey more than likely off the board at 8. Hargreaves, to me, he should be there, and that would be a no-brainer type of connection, especially after you ship out Byron Maxwell. Jeff, we've yet to hear from you. We're approaching the 10-minute mark. What are your thoughts on what the Philadelphia Eagles need to make this team more complete, make them have a shot at the NFC Championship next season, and who do you think are some of those guys that can make a difference day one from this first round?
Yeah, I think the Eagles are in a really unique position. Moving up to the 8th thing kind of changed their whole draft, in my opinion. I definitely see the dilemma if these quarterbacks start to slip through to the 8th pick now, as opposed to, what were they, at 13 before with the Dolphins?
Yeah.
So they're going to have, a lot more options in that way. So what I mean by the unique position is that normally you would say, okay, we're going to take the best player available. But the Eagles did address some of their problems, some of their roster challenges through free agency, but they still have a lot of positions that need to be filled that normally you would say for long-term development. But they're also in this division that is really wide open, that really could be turned around with one or two players. The Cowboys are in a state of flux. The Giants are in a state of flux. I don't think the Redskins are that great of a team. So the Eagles really could go from how last season went to an NFC Championship very easily. So I think that moving up to 8th was great, and they have a lot of different ways that they can go. I don't think quarterback is the way to go. I don't think developmental quarterback is the right move at this time, even if Goff were to slip to 8th. I think they have a huge need at running back. So by being in 8th now, there's a very good chance that one of the top offensive line prospects is going to be there. One of the top running back prospects is going to be there. One of the receiving prospects is going to be there. And one of the cornerback prospects is going to be there. So I think that they go into the draft with saying we're going to take the best player available on our board for that. And any one of those positions that we address is a very net positive. So if we end up with Ezekiel Elliott, if we end up with Ronnie Stanley, if we end up with Vernon Hargraves, if we end up with Laquan Treadwell in that position, we are a much better football team after the draft. I don't think any one of those positions is the wrong one to pick, and I don't think any one of those players is the wrong player to pick.
And Jeff,
so I think they all.
Jeff, I'll put yourself in Howie Roseman's shoes. Let's assume all those guys you just named are there, and it's very well that they could be. If you were Howie Roseman, which guy would you pull the trigger on at 8 and say, this is the guy that's going to turn the Philadelphia Eagles around?
Yeah, I think that's the best question. I think I'm a defense guy. I want to say that they should go Hargraves, or they should get an edge rusher. But I think the answer is they should go with Ezekiel Elliott. If Ezekiel Elliott's available at 8, I think that's where they should go. I think they need a runner. I think they need a running game. I think they need to cover over some warts on the offensive line. I think they need to cover over some warts at the quarterback position. And I think Ezekiel Elliott, I would very rarely advocate taking a running back early on like that, because I think it's such a fungible asset. But I think that particular player is the perfect player to cover over those holes and would make an immediate impact, day one starter, day one impact performer, and changes what they can do on offense and what other teams have to scheme for them defensively. And all of a sudden they become a total threat in their division.
Yeah, Jeff, I 100% agree with you. To me, the guy is Ezekiel Elliott, especially I think he'll be there at 8. I think he's a steal. I think he's one of the most complete running backs we've ever seen in the draft. I think he's going to make some NFL team really happy, and I think the Eagles can be one of them. I'm going to turn it back over to Alex for a second, because you brought up Laquan Treadwell as well, and we were talking prior to the show about how the Eagles are almost committed to their wide receiver situation. Even though they're young, they're all higher draft picks, and other guys are going to have to deal with, for the next couple of years and see if they pan out. And in addition to that, I know he hates Ezekiel Elliott. So I'll let you comment on both.
I don't hate him, but it's difficult because every year we see the same thing with first-round running backs, and for the most part, they're 50-50. I understand that Ziggy Elliott's coming out, played with an amazing Ohio State football team, one of the greatest complete football franchises as far as college football is concerned. I do like him, but as statistics show, regarding first-round drafted running backs, they don't always make the team that much better. We're more of a passing-oriented team. And just to switch gears for a little bit, the Eagles have decided to keep, they're not signing any veteran wideouts. They're sticking with the top 3 in Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, and Josh Huff. And also to point out, as a fan, I've noticed that they're all best friends. They all hang out regularly, and they're all on good terms, which is great for a wide-out core. And I think with these guys in particular, and I mentioned to you before we started the show, when you have 3 guys, even though they have not, outside of Matthews, proved their self-worth regarding this football team, with a new offense coming in, especially the West Coast, that prides itself on receivers that can make short and quick plays. And one of the things that both Aguilar and Huff are very good at is the run after the catch. Huff is a very physical downhill type of runner, and Aguilar is a great route runner, and Matthews is just an overall great player. So when you combine that with this West Coast offense, I feel that these three in particular will succeed very well to the degree that you will not need to bring in a veteran or have to draft very highly, such as Laquan Treadwell. However, if at that point Treadwell is the best guy on the board, then absolutely you pull the trigger. But if we're going back now to Ziggy Elliott, yes, is he a great player? Yeah. And is he going to be available at the number 8 position? Most likely. But I feel that at this point, for this particular draft, when D-line is so deep as it is for this draft in 2016, and outside of Fletcher Cox, Benny Logan, maybe Bo Allen, you don't really have much depth behind them, it would be wise to use your resources and your draft knowledge to go that route. You know, if Buckner is on the board, that would be a great pick. I know he's kind of a tweener between a D tackle and a D end, even a 5 tech. And, you know, you got a Sean Robinson, and a couple of the guys here have talked about Ramsey and Hargraves. I feel that these players will also be on the board. So if you include Ziggy Elliott with all the other guys that I just listed, running back is no longer that higher priority. When you compare all these other great defensive players, I feel that that's where you need to invest your franchise in first.
So I'll turn it over to Frankie now, because, you know, you were pretty determined that offense was the way to go, that the Eagles need to address. Obviously, you think it's quarterback, but do you think a guy like Elliott at 8 makes sense for the Eagles, or do you think they should, you know, address this defense and try to, you know, really build from the trenches and build this team up?
Yeah, well, regarding Elliott, are the Eagles going to keep DeMarco Murray? I mean, it's got to come down to that.
Murray's gone.
Murray got traded to the Titans a week ago.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
It's
That
Matthews,
was
you're thinking.
I got
Heard to Frankie.
Simple mistake.
Sorry, I got confused. I was looking at an article and it was bringing up Murray and the Eagles.
Don't you hate when that bit of dyslexia kicks in?
Check the date.
Well, what I'm saying with Elliott is, are they gonna be able to use Elliott like in an actual in the way he wants to be used? I mean, that's what I think it comes down to, because, you know, if you look at Murray last year and Sam Bradford, how that offense was styled, and I understand it was with Chip Kelly. I understand this is a totally different offense with Peterson, but you have to think for a second, if they're not going to want to run the ball, you know, 30, 35 times a game, and they're going to want to just kind of throw the ball all over the all over the place and you know, use a slew of backs, then maybe it's not worth getting a guy that high at 8, a running back. I do like Elliott a lot, and I think he's got a ton of big play potential in this league, and it'll be great. So I think if he's there and you feel comfortable with your defense, I think you go after him. But defensively speaking, yeah, I think getting someone in the trenches is a good call. I am not a DeForest Buckner fan, just because I'm not a tweener fan. I was watching some of his tape, and he gets double teamed and he falls and he's kind of all over the place. I don't like those guys. I wasn't a Melvin Ingram fan. I wasn't a Copels fan. It's just those kind of guys I just never really am sold on. He can be good. I'm not a end all be all here, but I think looking at some guys in the trenches makes sense. I think if they're looking at a guy like Miles Jack, or you're looking at a guy like Shaq Lawson maybe on the outside. I mean, I always like, you know, getting guys up front. I think it can help your team out a lot, and especially because the Eagles, given that they have some really good guys up front on the defensive side of the ball, I think if you really stack that side up, you're going to put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks and in that division especially, and you can really make some moves. So I think they have to look at defense. I think it goes quarterback first, then you look up front, and then if you're like satisfied with what you have on defense and there is no quarterback option, Wentz is gone, I think then you look at the prospect of Elliott.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, just real quick before we take our first break, when it comes to the Eagles, I think they should go for Ezekiel Elliott. I think Peterson really relied heavily on Jamal Charles in his time with Kansas City. And then last season, I mean, West and his name's eluding me, Spencer Ware, really did a great job of filling in. And Elliott's a back who can do everything, catch out of the backfield, run in between the trenches. He's quick.
Which is great for the West Coast offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a great fit, and you still have Ryan
Why
Matthews
buy
and
new when you
Sproulsey
can buy pre-owned?
on the
Skip the
roster.
depreciation.
But it's funny,
At Apollo
Alex,
Auto
you
Sales,
mentioned
they have over
first-round running backs
220
that don't
cars,
exactly
ranging
work
from
out.
$40,000
Ryan Matthews is
all the
one
way
of those
down to
guys, the first-round running back for the
$2,000.
Chargers.
Yes,
He
Who
heard
was
that right.
traded from his original
$2,000.
team to the
Visit
Phillies.
Exactly.
ApolloPreowned.com
And he didn't
or
exactly
call 856
work out.
881
That's going to do it for
2869.
Eagles
That number
draft
again
talk.
is
When we come
856
back, we'll talk
881
about the New York Jets draft needs.
2869.
So like I
Ask
said,
for
we're going
Joe.
to take a short
Apollo
break so
treats
that
you
our
like
sponsors can
family.
get a word in.
Their
You're
prices
listening
are
to
sick.
Code Green on WNJC,
The Shore
Yahoo
Conference,
Sports
located
Philly.
in Ocean and Monmouth County, New Jersey, is home to some of the best high school sports in the country. Yet finding reliable news and analysis has always been difficult. Not anymore. Head over to njsportsreport.com to stay up to date with everything in the Shore Conference, written by the fans for the fans.
Besides me thinking Murray was on the Eagles.
You know what? That was funny, though. That was funny. It's all good.
I totally
Here, wait,
blanked out
5
for a
seconds,
sec.
5 seconds. Or wait, I'm
Crazy.
sorry, 10.
I'm looking at his the page of him, and he's just all in Eagle stuff. I don't see anything else. I got confused.
It's all good. Here, wait. Everyone quiet.
It was a busy day.
Everyone quiet.
It
Everyone
was
quiet. Everyone
busy.
quiet. Everyone quiet. Everyone quiet.
quiet.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Code Green Radio Show on WNJC 1360 AM Yahoo Sports Radio Philly. I'm Craig Orbanoff, filling in for our normal host, Rich Wilhelm, enjoying his honeymoon. So he'll be back next week. Don't miss him too much. I think we're doing a great job without him. I'm joined by Alex Hand, Joe Perry, Jeff Steinman, and Frankie Vittorini. So we talked about the Philadelphia Eagles in our first segment, draft needs, guys they're looking at. Let's jump ship to our other team now. Let's talk about the New York Jets. And I'll throw it to Jeff first since I got to him last time. So we'll serpentine back around. In your mind, who is the team, or what are the needs of this team, and who are the guys in this draft, and being later in the first round at 20, who are some of the guys that you think Mike McCagnon is looking at?
Yeah, being at 20, obviously a huge difference from being at 8. A lot of the, number 1 and number 2 ranked players are going to be gone at the positions. People are talking about tight end, maybe cornerback to replace Antonio Cromartie, offensive line. But the number one need for me, and for a lot of people on their boards, is edge rusher. I think this defense has been missing an edge rusher since maybe Abraham left. And I think that it is the piece that's going to make the rest of this defense really go. If they really mean it, that they want to be an elite defense, a true top 5 defense, or mimicking what the Broncos did last year, particularly in the playoffs, then they're going to need an edge rusher. Obviously, my favorite edge rusher in it is probably Miles Jack, but he'll be long gone by the time we get to the Jets. So I've been targeting Leonard Floyd, which we talked about a little bit last week, and most of the guys kind of picked him as well. I want to stay far, far away from Noah Spence. I have zero interest in him whatsoever.
Why is that? He's awesome, I think.
I think he is not going to be a good pro, and I do not like his attitude or his red flags. And I don't think that the way that he approaches it will fit in well with the Todd Bowles system. Todd Bowles has a way that he likes people, and the Jets have sort of gone away from that kind of character player, which I would advocate. Just because you jumped in, like you love Noah Spence. What do you love about him?
I just like his get off, man. I think when he gets off the ball, he's got that first step that just you need, and I love his pursuit to the quarterback, to the football. It just seems like his hair's on fire when he's playing. I really like what he does there. I think he could be a 15, 16 sack guy in this league at some point. I really do.
Ooh, that's high.
So Frankie, let's.
It is high. Yeah, I think it can be an elite pass rusher, and I never say that about rarely anybody. But I like him better than when I was looking at film on Deion Jordan one year, and even Chandler Jones, who I really liked out of Syracuse. I love this guy Noah Spence a lot. But he does have red flags. He had a drug issue and a lot of other issues too. But so did Justin Houston, who ended up dropping big time because he had a pot issue. So sometimes these defensive guys get a little bit crazy. They're a little bit crazy, and it's not always a bad thing, I think, if that makes some sense.
Well,
I mean, I think
Frankie,
he's got an edge to him.
Let's have you elaborate now and talk about the draft needs of the Jets
and the guys you like to fill those needs? I mean, obviously you talked about pass rusher, you like Noah Spence. What are some other needs of this team?
Well, I mean, first, Noah Spence, huge fan. Just went over him a bit. I think we need an inside linebacker. Demario Davis is out in Cleveland now. We need someone to fill that spot. Jets are most likely going to bring back Henderson, but I'm not sure how much he's actually going to play. So I like Reggie Ragland. I do. I am not a huge fan. I don't see high boom there, but I don't see really a big risk there either. I think you can depend on Reggie Ragland to be that inside linebacker that's going to be playing, for the Jets for 5, 6, 7 years, assuming that he doesn't get injured and he sticks around. So I think he can be a staple to our defense there, especially with Harris getting older and kind of, he has a couple years left. So I would look at Reggie Ragland. And then a little bit of a dark horse here is what happens with Fitzpatrick. Where do we go with the quarterback position? I know 20's early, and I know we have other needs. I don't want to get another cornerback. I like Marcus Williams. I like some other guys we have back there. I don't want to look at cornerback right now. I think we've done that operation a little bit too much here. We have good safeties. I think we're fine there. Defensive line, we're fine. Linebacker, I just brought up. So I'm thinking now we're going to look at offense. Wide receivers we have. We could use a tackle. We could definitely use a tackle. I'm not sure if Giacomini, what's his situation going to be. So, someone like a Jason Spriggs or this guy Cody Whitehair, I'm not really sure how good these guys are, to be honest, but we could look at that. Potentially a guard, although I don't like getting guards in the first round. Unless they're really good. So, but I would look at quarterback too. I mean, if the Jets like a guy like, I'm not a big Paxton Lynch fan, but you never really know who falls at 20. These drafts get interesting, and you have to really invest. If you don't have a quarterback, you have nothing in this league. You really don't. I mean, who won the Super Bowl this last year? Even though he's not that good anymore, physically speaking, Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl. Last year, Tom Brady won. Even if these guys are old, they understand the game. Peyton knows how to audible. You need a quarterback at the end of the day, and if someone's there at 20 that interests you and Fitzpatrick for whatever reason isn't back, or you just don't have faith in him, got to look at that position too, because that's the biggest difference on the football field.
Yeah, Frankie, for sure. You mentioned the quarterback situation. The more and more time passes, the more and more I feel like we're not going to bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I agree with you.
Which, it opens up the door to a guy like Paxton Lynch, who I would feel a little bit more comfortable at starting than maybe Geno Smith, or at least letting them compete. But you bring up a guy in Cody Whitehair, who I know that the first round is a little high to take a guy like that, but the guard position for the Jets has been a joke for years, really since Alan Faneca left. I mean, we've had some trouble filling in at guard, and not for nothing, if he's a day one starter and he's the best guy on the board, why not? I mean, a lot of other guys seem to have question marks. I haven't seen any question marks on this guy. And he seems like he's a pretty good interior lineman, and he could be a staple of the offensive line for a couple of years. Joe, let's throw it over to you. Who do you think? Where do you think this team needs to address? What are the positions it needs?
All right, so I think for this draft's going to be very important for Maccagnan to stick to his board. I think they need a pass rusher. That's obvious. I'm going to put the quarterback aside because I personally think Fitzpatrick will be back with the Jets. Even so, Paxton Lynch at 20, I think he needs some time to sit back and develop. I don't think that he can come right out of the gate and start. So I'm going to put quarterback to the side for a second because I think Fitzpatrick's coming back. So I think pass rusher number 1. They need help on the offensive line number 2. It's so important. They're just getting so old, and James Carpenter is probably, and Mangold, of course, probably the only two you can really rely on at this point. Even DeBrickashaw, he's just nothing what he used to be. So yeah, you got to look at offensive line, and the linebacker position needs work. It really does. That's probably one of our weaker positions right now. David Harris is seasoned. That's being nice, but So Noah Spence, I'm not crazy about, and if he's not atop of this big board here of Mike Maccagans, you have to go BPA just like he did last year when Leonard Williams slipped to him. Just take the best player available at the 20 spot. I mean, it's probably going to be really tough for him to go BPA over need because everyone thinks they're going to go pass rusher. I love Leonard Floyd, just like Jeff does. I think Leonard Floyd could be a big sack guy on this defense. I think he can hit the gap real well. So, yeah, I mean, pass rusher. Here's my question. I mean, 2 weeks ago we were all saying if Ezekiel Elliott somehow slips to 20, Jets take him. Do they still do that now with the signing of Matt Forte? That's what I've been wrestling around with. I mean, he would be BPA at 20. It's just I don't know with Matt Forte. I don't know if they would pull the trigger on that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Joe, that's a great question to ask, and I think the answer is yes, because we didn't need Leonard Williams last year. We didn't. We had Sheldon Richardson, we had Muhammad Wilkerson, and we had Damon Harrison up front, and we had guys to rotate into. We had Douzable, Stephen Bowen. We had guys along that D-line, and he was still the best player at number 6, and McCagnon still took him. So if Ezekiel Elliott is there at 20, yeah, I think they're going to take him.
Especially that late in the draft. This is number 20 we're talking about.
And not
There's
for
people
nothing
that are saying like it might be a steal if he falls to the Eagles at 8. So if he lasts all the way to 20, that's an amazing feat.
And just not for nothing, Matt Forte is over 30. He could be on the decline. We don't know. Running backs, when they hit 30, something changes. Kyrie Robinson has not been able to consistently carry the ball for a team yet in his NFL career. I know he has decent numbers, but he hasn't been able to be a go-to back. And Bilal Powell, we all know what he is. He's a third down back. He's a catch-passing back. And he was a big part of the offense towards the tail end of the season, but he also had a lot of injury concern. So I think it's still an upgrade, but I just, I'm not entirely sold on Leonard Floyd. I'm not 100% there yet. And at this, I don't think this is a very strong draft. I think we got a little spoiled. There was strength in the drafts through the first 3 rounds, really. And this year's draft, there's like the top 5 guys, and everyone else is kind of a question mark. So, Alex, I'll turn it to you, because I know you do your homework on just about everybody, rounds 1 through 7.
This year it's about rounds 1 through 2.
Okay,
so.
Fair enough, but who do you think? The Jets, they need some O-line help, they need a pass rusher, and hell, they might need a quarterback. So
let me start with just the needs, the positional needs, and I'll get to players specifically. But quarterback, right now Fitz hasn't signed anything, so right now there's only 2 quarterbacks in Geno Smith and Bryce Petty. So quarterback, depending on who's available at 20, if we're still talking about the first round, I feel is a very important position. Offensive line, really at all 3 positions, center, guard, and tackle. You could draft any number of guys there. Cody Whitehair, I kind of view as Nelson Aguilar last year in that, yes, I'll give him a second-round grade, but more than likely somebody will draft him in the first. Tackle could easily be taken. Jack Conklin could fall, depending on how other teams view him leading up to the draft. Defensive line, one of the most, like I said earlier, one of the most deepest positions in this draft, if not the deepest position, and there's great talent there. And after the loss of, names eluding, Damon Harrison, he lost Snacks to the New York Giants. It would be a great opportunity for the Jets to replenish that position with the first round pick at number 20. Barring how deep this draft is, and depth in the secondary. I feel you lost Crow. And even at the beginning of the season, with a couple of injuries, safety wasn't that secure of a spot. So there's really a handful of spots you could lean. Leonard Floyd, I like due to his pass rushing skills, but I fear that he's too underweight because right now, at his best, is 244 pounds. At a 3'4", that is way too light. He's got great height. He's 6'6". There's already a great start to build off of. At 244 pounds, he's not going to be able to start day one. Will they rotate him in? Absolutely, but I don't feel he will make that immediate impact as what you would hope for first-round picks to be. A Sean Robinson, if he were to fall at that point, a lot of people view him more as a one-tech designed for the run game with a little bit of pass rusher, not so much as the nose tackle that'll take on 2 guys every single snap throughout the game, barring 40 snaps. But if he were to fall to 40, somebody like Robinson, that would be a steal at that point. Or, excuse me, 20. Reggie Ragland, I kind of agree with that. He's a little heavy. I view him more as a 4-3 linebacker versus a 3-4 inside. But once again, if he were to fall to 20, I still feel he would be a great improvement with the Jets defense. Paxton Lynch, again, if he were to fall to 20, that would be terrific for this Jets team that's kind of like you said earlier, let him and Geno battle it out during August. That would be great for this organization. And a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, Carl Joseph from West Virginia at strong safety. Amazing young man. He only stands at 5'10", but will eagerly get his nose into the box, be that eighth guy there, and can easily roam the back eight. He will gladly do any position you ask of him. So, and even though he's got a knee injury right now and he's rehabbing from that, I still view him as a first-round pick. So either one of the guys that I just listed, including Cody Whitehair, like I said earlier, would be a terrific upgrade for this Jets franchise looking to make a run, and not only the AFC East, but the AFC as a whole.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of names, a lot of positions. For me, I really wanted Ezekiel Elliott. That's what I wanted out of this year's draft prior to free agency. And now, with the guys on the roster, and the more and more I think about it, too, I think my initial thought was just go outside linebacker. It makes sense. But the more and more I think about it, and the more and more time we spend without Ryan Fitzpatrick as a member of the New York Jets, and for whatever reason, I don't think he's going to budge. And just on top of that, if he does budge, I don't know how much his heart is going to be in it anymore after this process.
You're saying that if he's almost forced to sign a contract with the money that he does not want, he's only going to put in half the effort.
Yeah, and it scares me a little bit. And the more and more I think about that, the more and more a guy like Paxton Lynch sounds pretty attractive to the New York Jets. Now, Frankie, before the show, you were mentioning you didn't like Paxton Lynch, and you brought it up a little bit before. Just elaborate a little bit on some things you don't like. Obviously, we know his athleticism. We know he has a strong arm. We also know he came from a small school. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, with Paxton, when I see him playing quarterback, I think he's just a little bit hesitant. He'll overlook things. He'll get a little nervous when the pocket breaks down. He'll just throw to a first read because he has to, not because it's actually the best best place to go with the football. Looks like a little bit like Mark Sanchez in that respect. I mean, if you tell a guy like Sanchez you're throwing to your first read, he doesn't care if there's a guy about to jump that first read. He's throwing it there. He's not going to go to read 2 or 3. I mean, he's just there's no improvising there. There's no improvisation, which is so crucial with quarterbacks, especially at the NFL level. You can get away with it in college, and if you're really good, you can get away with it early on in the NFL. But once teams start getting a little bit of your MO, per se, you have issues just going with your first read. Just to kind of jump into something random, similar topic. Christian Hackenberg, I'm hearing rumors that the Jets might like him because of McCagnon's connections with Houston, and Bill O'Brien being from Penn State might have a good relationship with Christian, and there might be something there with McCagnon. So I'm not saying at 20, but I'm saying look for that storyline to play its way out, assuming even if Fitzpatrick comes back. Hackenberg plays a little bit like Fitzpatrick if you watch him, so just kind of throwing that in there.
Well, wait. Let me jump in because I know I'm the only other one who actually kind of likes.
I didn't have
Christian
much to say. I was
Hackenberg.
going to say that was an incredibly vague rumor regarding McCagnon and Hackenberg.
I too have been hearing the rumors, and I'm not going to lie. I would be really happy if we came away with Christian Hackenberg out of this draft. I think he was a good player at Penn State, and that team lost a lot of talent over the past couple of seasons, and you can't exactly blame their lack of success to Christian Hackenberg. He still had pretty good numbers. He needs to work on his accuracy, but I think your comparison to Ryan Fitzpatrick is pretty fair as well. And he's a guy I like, and quite frankly, I think he could start come September.
Yeah, I'm with you, Craig. I like Hackenberg. I think he's going to be coming out with a chip on his shoulder too, because he was this hyped up prospect his freshman year, and the team just collapsed around him. So I think he's going to be coming out. He's going to get drafted. He's not going to go high, and he's going to come out with this chip on his shoulder. He's got all the arm talent in the world. I think Hackenberg could be a good value play.
And Jeff, real quick, jump in.
Sorry. I don't like Christian Hackenberg at all.
That's okay.
But I love him in the 3rd or 4th round to come in and compete with Bryce Petty, to come and say, okay, a year from now, 2 years from now, we need you to be NFL ready. I definitely don't think he can start next year. And if the situation, just going with the scenarios you guys are describing, if the situation is that Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty and Geno Smith are competing for the QB1 position next year, I'm not going to be very happy. I'm not
Disaster.
Yeah, I was going to say, the way you listed those quarterbacks.
That a good offseason. And it's going to kill me even more when I'm watching Mark Sanchez in the AFC Championship game next year because he has a great defense again. What I wanted to bring up real quick about the Paxton Lynch thing, an interesting thing that I read today that I hadn't thought of was that there's speculation that the Broncos draft him at 31 at the end of the first round. And if they do that, they're out of the Ryan Fitzpatrick chase. And you would think, so I was thinking, okay, well then it's, the Jets are in the driver's seat because there's nobody else. And they were saying that if the Broncos drafted Paxton Lynch 31, that the 49ers would jump in on Ryan Fitzpatrick. What does everybody think about that?
That's absolutely. I don't even know what to think of that. We might have to save that bad boy for next week because wow, that's actually all the time we have for this segment. So we're gonna have to take a short break so that some of our sponsors can get a word in. When we come back, we'll do our Fan Dings debate of the night. Who's gonna win the NFC East? And maybe, just maybe, we'll get to some NFL rule changes. You're listening to the Code Green Radio Show on WNJC, Yahoo Sports Philly.
Why buy new when you can buy pre-owned?
Skip the depreciation.
At Apollo Auto Sales, they have over 220 cars, ranging from $40,000 all the way down to $2,000.
Yes, you heard that right. $2,000.
Visit ApolloPreowned.com or call 856-881-2869. That number again is 856-881-2869.
Ask for Joey. Apollo treats you like family.
Their prices are sick. Hey Craig, have you heard about this new company, the Sports Gaming Association?
No, who are they?
Well, they host esports events, and they're starting their own sports news network online. You know how you're always telling me how great you are at Madden and NBA 2K?
Of course, my game is top notch.
Well, now you can prove it. Go to sportsgamingassociation.com and check out their schedule. They're adding new events every day.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out.
While you're at it, you can buy authentic jerseys there too. That way you can represent at your next event. They have events coming up in Milwaukee, Chicago, Philly, and Harrisburg, plus more coming soon. Check them out at sportsgamingassociation.com.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Code Green Radio Show here on Yahoo Sports Radio Philly, WNJC 1360 AM. Again, I'm Craig Orbanoff filling in for Rich Wilhelm on his honeymoon. And we hope he's having a lot of fun. We're having fun here on the air without him. I'm joined here by Alex Hand, Joe Perry, Jeff Steinman, Frankie Vittorini. And now we're up to our Fan Dings debate of the night. It's one of our favorite segments because we get to yell at each other uncontrollably. So the NFC East, it's one of the most wide open divisions in football. One of our teams that we cover, the Philadelphia Eagles, was right there in the thick of things last season before falling short. And we'll,
don't remind me.
And we'll go to our resident Eagles fan. Who do you think's going to win this division next season?
It's really a toss-up. Like as I said to you before the show, ever since the 2005 season, it's really been a toss-up between the NFC East. And to be quite honest with you, who I feel has the greatest chance to succeed and become the NFC East champ again are the Washington Redskins, because, they're the returning champs for starters. They have a young quarterback, a great wide receiver core, a relatively solid O-line. And if this defense, if they go to the draft, they do what the Eagles did last year and spend a lot of their draft picks on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense chooses to step up this year, I feel that without a doubt they could be the reigning champions. Now the Eagles should be right behind them just as last year, but off the beat and looking just on the, on paper anyway, I feel the Redskins have the highest chance of repeating as NFC East champions.
And then I love going, Alex, to Frankie, because I feel like you guys just love to butt heads. So, Frankie, who do you think is going to win the NFC East championship?
Well, I just want to say that last 30 seconds was absolutely ridiculous because there is no chance the Redskins are repeating. You could book it.
Like I said, they have a lot of work to do, but I want to hear your point on this. I'm interested.
I think they got lucky that they even were in contention for the NFC East. I don't see them, but I mean, hey, they did win it last year, so I mean, it's not all that crazy. I have a team winning the NFC East that it pains me to say, but being from New York, I got to give it to the Giants. I don't want them to win the division. I just think that the Cowboys are going to be in a state of flux still. They're all over the place, and I'm not a Garrett fan. I don't think the Redskins are going to repeat. I like the Eagles, but as a team in the future, I like Peterson, but I think it's too early to bring all these pieces together in 1 year and make it happen. So I think the Giants are going to win the NFC East. I think Eli is going to have a good season. If they can address the running back position, they should sign one of these guys that's available. There's a ton of them. I don't know why they still think that they can go with Rashad Jennings and Vereen's not an every down back, so they need to get a running back in there. Andre Williams hasn't panned out. They need a running back. But besides, with that being said, I think the Giants are going to win the division. They got their defense shored up on the defensive front. That'll bode well with defensive coordinator Spagnuolo, who likes those defensive linemen. So, unfortunately, I think the Giants are going to win the NFC East.
See, the beauty of the NFC East is that none of us are completely wrong, because not any team has consecutively won the NFC East since, I think, 2004, really. So this is a beautiful debate in that none of us can actually be wrong.
Well, I want to comment real quick on the defense of the Giants, because just because they brought in 3 guys that they paid an insane amount of money to me doesn't mean
too much money.
To me doesn't mean they shored up anything. I don't know if Olivier Vernon is all that spectacular. I was never really all that afraid of him when he was a Dolphin playing the Jets twice a year. Snacks, I know what he is. He's a run stopper. That's really all he amounted to in New York. He was one of the best at it, but he was a run stopper. And one corner does not a secondary make. The Giants defense was really bad last year. So I'm not entirely sold on the Giants, but I'll add in my 2 cents at the end of this. So we have the Redskins with a vote, and we have the Giants with a vote. So Joe, let's throw it to you. Who's winning the NFC East?
So real quick, Olivier Vernon, the signing from the Giants. We know us Jet fans know the Dolphins very well. I'll be honest with you, I didn't hear the guy's name one time when we played him 2 times. So you guys can bring up the stats on what he did in those games. I didn't even know he was on the field. But and he's getting J.J. Watt money now. So I'll start right there. I am not buying the Giants' free agent signings. I think that it's something they had to do, but I'm not buying it at all. I mean, they totally overpaid for Snacks Harrison, the 2-down player. I mean, yeah, he was one of the better run stuffers in the league, but at the same time, you don't have to break the bank for guys like that. They totally went above and beyond for Harrison. Janoris Jenkins, he's a good cornerback, but the upgrade from Prince Amukamara, I mean, I think it's marginal. From a health standpoint, yeah, it's a big upgrade, but talent-wise, they're both kind of on the same playing field, and I don't even know who else they brought in. They just threw a whole bunch of money at a bunch of guys, and usually when you win free agency, you don't really win that much. I mean, you can only do so much in free agency and make your team that much better. Broncos aside, because they did that, but for the most part, when you win free agency, you're not going to really win the Super Bowl. That's kind of like a rule of thumb. So Giants are out. Redskins, I'm not buying the repeat. I'm just not buying it. I mean, they won it last year at 8-8, but I'm not going to buy that. So I think it's between the Eagles and Cowboys. Eagles are the X factor because none of us know how it's going to play out under Doug Peterson and the new regime. I mean, we can sit here and predict it until we're blue in the face, but I don't think they're the wild card. Let's just say that. So I gotta go with the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're in the 4th slot for the draft this year. I think they're gonna end up with Ezekiel Elliott or Joey Bosa, and I think those guys are difference makers right off the bat. So I think that's a huge pick for this Cowboy team who's ready to win now. Tony Romo's obviously got to stay healthy, but listen, you can't count them out if Romo can play these full 60. He's getting the screw in the shoulder now. Listen, he's got to learn how to fall. The guy falls right on his collarbone every single time, and you tell me that he can't protect himself and fall differently. Of course he can. He just has to stop falling like an idiot, for lack of a better term. He's just falling right on his shoulder. But so I got the Cowboys. They're a win now team. They have a lot of dark horse players that no one knows on that defensive line. They have some very good players on that D line. Throw Joey Bosa in there. I think that the Cowboys are a dangerous team.
So just bouncing off of what you said, you think that depending on how they answer their team team needs during the draft, whether it Bosa or Elliott, should determine how the rest of the season will play out with that one player X factor alone.
I think it's rare that a win now team gets to pick so high in the draft. That they're in a special situation with Romo going down last year. So yeah, I think this is one of those exceptions where one player I think could sway the difference in an evenly distributed division where I think every team has a 25% chance to win. I think someone like Ezekiel Elliott or Joey Bosa could push them over the top for another win or two. I mean, I could be totally wrong in this, but I think it's that close in the division.
And yeah, I think you bring up some good points there. And so we have one Redskins, one Cowboys, one Giant. Jeff, you could potentially tie it all up here or, announce a winner, basically, because my vote will be the ending vote. So, Jeff, who's going to do it? Who's going to be the champ?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what's been said already. I think the division is very close. I think that we're going to be in a situation where 9-7 probably wins the division. I don't think it's an 8-8 or 7-9 year. I think one team is going to improve enough to be 9-7, even a 10-6 team. But I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to come down to the last quarter of the season. I think there's going to be 3 teams at the end of the year that are all, if this one loses and this one wins, they can clinch the same way that it went this year. And whenever I'm trying to do predictions about the season, I look at the schedule and who is the NFC East playing this year. They're playing the AFC North and the NFC North. So you're playing Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. A lot of tough teams to play. Pittsburgh's
I like
offense.
how you left the Browns out.
I was just going
there.
to say, thankfully we left Cleveland out because we already know they're bottom of the cellar anyway.
But I'm sorry, finish your point.
I did intentionally leave Cleveland and Detroit out there. I was hoping nobody would notice. But there's a lot of tough games there. They obviously play each other, 2 games, 6 games on their schedule, and there's at least 4 more games on there. So you're talking about 10 games right now on your schedule are toss-ups. So when there's that many, more than toss-ups, like very difficult games. And when you do that, I look at it and say, who has a good defense? I think they all have similarly ranked defenses. I think they're all going to be pretty good defensively, and they have some question marks. So you wait to see what's going to happen. And then the final tiebreaker, I think, is going to be who has the best quarterback and receiver. And I think it comes down to what Eli Manning can do with Odell Beckham Jr. and what Tony Romo can do with Dez Bryant. I don't think Tony Romo's going to be healthy. I don't think that they're going to be that kind of a difference maker that I'm describing. So I'm going to go ahead and lean towards the Giants on this one. And I think the X factor in it is not the Redskins. I think the X factor is actually the Eagles. I think if they can get it together, if Peterson can come in there and run an offense like he did in Kansas City and get that kind of production out of it, that they can actually be in those close games and turn those close games in their favor. But right now you're asking me a gun to my head. I have to pick the Giants because I think with all else being 500, the quarterback receiver combination, because I think at 10 they can take somebody like Laquan Treadwell and take some pressure off Odell Beckham Jr. and all of a sudden you're really going to have to defend that offense, and that could be the difference in a season where everybody's around the same record in December.
All right, so that's actually going to decide it. According to this debate, the Giants will win the NFC East. However, I've yet to cast my vote, and I'm going to jump in and just comment on each team real quick. The Washington Redskins, to me, actually have the most legit quarterback in Kirk Cousins. That's just for my money. Agree to disagree. I like Kirk Cousins a lot. I think that's a good offensive line. They have good weapons. The defense is just bad. And maybe they're able to address that in the draft. They weren't very active in free agency. I don't think they were active at all, actually, the more and more I think about it. But I think they're still a good team, and I think that they could improve offensively, and, Kirk might be able to carry them to the playoffs. I think the Giants' defense will continue to be a joke. I know they got 3 players, and they're paying a lot of money for those 3 players, but I would rather them spend a little less money and get 6 or 7 players because – yeah, they got the splash guys, but I believe Joe said it before. When you win free agency, odds are you don't win the Super Bowl, and we've seen that from the Miami Dolphins every single year. The Dallas Cowboys, if Tony Romo can stay healthy, Not the whole season. I know that's ludicrous. He'll never stay healthy for the whole season. But if he can limit it to like missing 4 games, I think they have a real good shot at making it to the playoffs as the NFC East champion. I think they're leaning towards Miles Jack in the draft. It could be Ezekiel Elliott. Either way, I think both of those guys will make a difference. But the team I'm going to go with is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. And let me tell you why. I think they've addressed a lot of key needs, offense and defense, in the offseason. They shipped out the players who didn't want to be there. They got back things in return. They moved up in the draft. They re-signed their quarterback. They got a good backup in case Bradford can't stay healthy. And, I think this is a team who, if they had the right coaching last season, would have been able to get it done and win the division last year. I don't think the rest of the division got all that much better. And the Eagles, to me, were able to improve themselves and open up a lot of salary cap space and, will be good in the future as well. But I think they've set themselves up pretty well this season, and if they have a good draft, I think they'll win the division.
So the Eagles fan chose the Redskins, and the Jets fan chose the Eagles.
Out of us two, yeah.
Got it.
And then we had 2 votes for the Giants and 1 vote for the Cowboys. I was kind of back and forth. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm glad we were
difficult.
kinda...
I mean, like I said earlier, it's been a toss-up ever since the mid-2000s. Not one of these teams has consecutively won the division year after year. So that's why it's such a great debate, because we really don't know on a regular basis what this, for lack of a better word, mediocre division will ever do on a yearly basis.
Absolutely.
It's a fun division, man. It really is.
It always has been, whether it was when it was really good and was super competitive or when it's really bad and it's wide open. It's still really fun to talk about.
1980s or right now.
Yeah, it's still really
guys,
fun to
don't
talk
forget Victor Cruz is coming back too, guys.
Oh,
so.
get out of here with that. Get out of here with that.
He's coming back. He's coming.
Derek Rose,
I'm done with the
hashtag
salsa.
return.
I'm done with it.
Yeah.
He's coming back in a wheelchair. That's how he's coming back.
But we have a couple more minutes here on Code Green, about 3. So, Joe, you were the one who was really hot on the rule changes before the show. So, tell me, what are your thoughts on Roger Goodell's proposal about 2 personal fouls equaling an ejection?
Yeah, sure. I'll be quick on it. I don't want it, because think about what a personal foul is. A guy will tug on the face mask, right? That's 1 personal foul. Okay, let's say he has an unnecessary roughness, right? That's another personal foul, which could very well happen during a game. So now you're telling me this guy's out for a face mask and then maybe a late hit or a rough in the passer or something like that. Like I can't get on board with the 2 personal foul ejections. They're gonna have to be a little more precise if they're gonna go through with this rule. It's gonna have to be a little more precise. But someone said earlier that the owners just weren't in agreement on the rule change. So it doesn't. I don't think it's gonna work out with just the broad personal foul, 2 personal fouls ejection. So I'm not about it. I'm not all about it.
Well, they said they're going to limit it to specific infractions we're going to count towards the thing, right? There was 5 things that they listed off that would have to be.
Okay, I didn't see which they were.
I thought the neat part about it was they pointed out today that what precipitated this idea was the Odell Beckham Josh Norman game, and under the rule they were proposing, Odell Beckham would not have been ejected.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's insane.
Wow. But, real quick, I'll give Frankie and Alex and Jeff like 20 seconds each. I'll let Joe talk since he was the one who brought it up. But like 20 seconds, then I'm going to cut you off. Jeff, just start it off real quick on 2 personal fouls and you're out.
I think it's one of those things that's well-intentioned and it will probably pass. But I don't think it'll be good in practice. I think there'll be a big game sometime where there's a shaky call in the first half and you get a big call in the second half, and all of a sudden a marquee player is kicked out of the game on one of these technical rules.
Yep.
I loved how you did that. Short, sweet, to the point. Frankie, same thing. 20 seconds. Go.
Well, this is so hard for me, but let me try. The game is way too emotional. I don't think being objective with something like this and saying 2 personal fouls, you're out, makes really any sense. It's too much of an emotional game, too fast. Guys are too aggressive. can't do it. It's got to be something subjective within the context of a game.
That was great. Short, sweet, to the point. Alex, same thing. 20 seconds. Go.
Just as I didn't know this before it was mentioned, but I was going to say I doubt the owners are going to agree with this. These are older guys generally. They remember how the sport was in the 1970s and 1980s. They look for that physical contact, so I doubt that they're going to vote on this.
Wow, great job, guys. And we are actually all in agreement. Agreements? I think that's how you say it. Agreements. For the first time ever, we all think that this is a bad move for the NFL. So, guys, absolutely great show. We're going to, have a lot of fun when Rich comes back next week. But that's all the time that we're going to have here today for a Code Green on WNJC, Yahoo Sports Radio Philly. I'm Craig Gorbanoff for Alex Hand, Jeff Steinman, Joe Perry, and, of course, Frankie Vittorini. From U Stadium, thanks so much for listening, and remember, bleed green or don't bother bleeding.